Hello, my fellow Renegades. Welcome back to another Renegade Society radio show. Thank you so much for joining me. I am your host, as always, Amanda, and I'm so happy to have you all here with me. Before we jump into it and I have two very exciting guests today, and I'm really excited to talk to them about some pretty cool games, one of which is new. But before we get there, I have a couple updates for you. So we do have the Scott Pilgrim Miniatures The World, which is now available. That comes with painted minis, and it is amazing. It is super cool. It is basically a miniature team-based competitive game, which was also made in partnership with Oni Games, and it's based obviously in the world of Scott Pilgrim. And if you know me, you know I'm in Toronto, so Scott Pilgrim is totally my jam. So yeah, check that out. You can check it out online, or you can check it out at your friendly local game store and definitely get your hands on that. We also have Subastral, which is now available and for pre-order. So you can check out that amazing game. It is a beautiful strategic card game that focuses on the glorious biomes of planet Earth. Really, really beautiful game. And that was designed by Pinchback and Matt Riddle with art by Beth Sobel. And I also love everything Beth Sobel does for art is so beautiful. So yeah, definitely check that out. And before we get to the guests, just a quick little reminder, we are doing a giveaway today, which is very exciting. And our giveaway is for Circadians. And so the code word will be given away later in the interview. So make sure you keep your ears open for that. And when you hear it, you can always enter it by going to the link in the chat that Desiree will send to you. All right, friends. So now my fantastic guests that I have for you today are Ben Pinchback and Matt Riddle. Hello, friends.
Hey, thanks for having us, Amanda. It's great to be here tonight. This afternoon, wherever you are.
Yeah, whatever time it is, wherever you're watching. Good morning, if it's morning where you are.
That's right.
Yeah, we're very inclusive of time zones here. Yes, hello to you both. Thank you so much for joining me. And if anyone has any questions as well for my guests, please feel free to throw those in the chat, and we will be getting to those later, closer to the end. So before we jump into it, I mean, obviously, I just talked about Subastral, so I feel like people probably know a little bit about who you are. But could you tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and where we can find both you and your work online? And Matt, maybe we'll start with you.
Yeah, no, cool. So Matt Riddle, Ben and I have been designing games for 10 years now.
10 years now.
10 years.
Yeah.
Long time. Yeah.
Yes,
it doesn't feel it, but it is.
No. So we grew up together. We live here in Detroit, and Ben and I have known each other since we were 12 years old, basically. So wow. We went to college, kind of grew up in the same school, church, etc., and then kind of reconnected. And we were friends the whole time, but reconnected kind of as game design partners when Ben and I worked together, and we still do work together, frankly. And he kind of said, "Hey, let's design a game." And I said, "Sure." So that was about 12 years ago. And a couple years later, Fleet came out, and then 10 years later, we're still doing it. So we're really excited, to have a chance to continue doing this. And if you ever want to find us, I think you said, let us know where we're at. I think the easiest way for me is always Twitter, but I think we do that at the end, right? So
yeah, we can recap. We'll recap that at the end as well too. Yeah. But Twitter. What's your Twitter handle?
MD Riddlen. So MDRIDDLEN is how they find me.
Excellent. And how about you, Ben?
Yeah, so Matt pretty much gave our origin story. We kind of grew up together, went to college, ended up working at the same place, started making games. I started making games with Matt because at game night, he was like my arch nemesis. He's the guy that would, win all the time. If I wasn't winning, he was winning. He was kind of like my villain. So it just made sense. I'm like, if I'm going to make games, I'm going to choose the best gamer I know. And we're great friends. So 10, 11, 12 years later, we're still having fun with it. We just started our own company, Motor City Gameworks. So we just had a big Kickstarter with our Three Sisters game, but we're still designing games as designers as well. And that's never going to stop. So we love making games. We love working with Renegade. There's publishers, that we just love working with. So that is always going to continue, especially these card games like Stellar and Subastral we love making. That's all like growing up in the Midwest and Michigan, you just have like card games in your DNA. You just play card games. So we will never stop making card games. We love doing that. And especially like these kind of thinky ones. And then you put like Beth Sobel art on it and it's just dynamite. So
yeah,
we couldn't be more excited for Subastral, for how it's looking, and just looking forward to people playing it.
Yeah, I mean, it looks amazing. I'm really
Oh my
excited to
goodness.
get into it, and I'm a big Stellar fan. So yeah,
Thank you.
I'm basically like I'm in this world of like pretty card games that are all kind of like based on like big beautiful locations, and I'm just like I am about this. I like this a lot, so I feel that 100%. Where can we find you, Ben, online? Are you on Twitter as well?
Yeah, so mostly online. My presence is on Twitter. I'm at Pinchback 21, and yeah, that's where I primarily hang out online. A little bit of Facebook with Motor City Gameworks, but mostly on Twitter.
Yeah, Twitter's where it's at. I feel you.
It is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. Well, I think it's so cool that you both also have known each other for so long, and then you were just like, let's design games together. That works. That must also make it, does that make it a little bit easier too when you're designing games with
Yeah,
each other?
we always joke that like we've known each other longer than we haven't known each other. Like Matt said, we kind of met each other at 12 and 13. So
Mhm.
when we're designing games, we get to skip like the niceties, and we're just very honest with each other. So it gets through ideas very quickly. It's like if you'd only known somebody a little bit, you might have a tough time telling them that the idea might not work. Matt does not have that problem telling me that my ideas don't work. Like, he's very honest. But I think we work well that way, and we can get through a lot of ideas very quickly. And we play test very quick. I know a lot of designers say that, and we're the same way, that we get a game on the table as fast as possible. And we get to playing it, and we're very honest with each other. And yeah, we cycle pretty quick that way.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that. And I feel like it's probably good that you have that personal connection, so that when you're kind of saying to each other like, oh no, that's not good. It's the thing of like, you can take it with a grain of salt, as opposed to being like, oh, I don't know if this person is.
Yeah, like, it's like, listen, I love you, but we're not doing that.
Exactly. Which is great. And so when you met, you said you're both 12 and 13. Where did you meet? Like at school, or just in the same neighborhood?
Yeah, we went to the same high school, but we were a couple years apart. We actually met at like a youth group, like through a church we both attended growing up. And Ben's older brother is actually a year ahead of me, and Ben's a few years behind me. So we were all kind of ran in those same circles. And kind of like you referenced, right? I mean, it's part of this journey as game designers has been also getting into the conventions and all those things that we had never done prior to designing Fleet, our first game. We'd never been to a convention.
Wow.
I was vaguely aware of, Gen Con, I think, kind of like auxiliary, but I had no idea what it was. I remember going to my first convention, and the booth that we were kind of supporting was right next to this giant blue phone booth. I'm like, what the heck is that giant blue phone booth? And turns out it's Doctor Who, which I had no awareness of, say 12 years ago or 10 years ago when we went to our first con. And, so I say that to say that for me, the part that, the fact that not only is obviously, like Ben said, we can be very frank and honest with each other, which helps game design. It's been fun to, to be able to do all this stuff with someone that's truly one of my best friends. And that when we go to conventions, they're fun, independent of the game design stuff, right? Because we're hanging out and we get to do stuff, and, his brother will come, and a couple other of our friends will come. It's made the whole process and the whole journey so much better to have that experience, someone that I've got roots with.
Yeah. And I love going to a con and like kind of having like a little con posse that you kind of wander around with and explore with. That's one of my favorite things. And especially over the years from going to conventions, something that's developed is like me having like a con friend group.
Summer camp friends.
Yeah, basically. And
that's what we call it.
Yeah. You're still friends with them outside of the con, but the con is really the time when you get to get together and really like explore just all sorts of like crazy adventures together. Also, it's really funny that you mentioned Doctor Who, because the other day I was wearing a coat that's like the new Doctor, so Jodie Whittaker's Doctor, and I get so many compliments on this coat because it's just a really pretty coat, and people don't know it's from Doctor Who.
Right.
And my sister was complimenting me on it the other day, and I was like, "Oh, it's Doctor Who," and I like pulled out my sonic screwdriver, which I always keep in my pocket when I wear it. And she was like, "Oh, you just made it weird and nerdy, didn't you?" And I was like, I showed her the TARDIS on the inside, because it is a TARDIS on the inside of the coat. And yeah, so I feel that. But I also didn't know what Doctor Who was like 5 years ago. So it has opened my mind.
There's so much out there. And I mean that like in a positive way. Like I always joke around that I'm super happy that, this generation, like say my children, my kids are teenagers, they
Mhm.
can enjoy what they want to enjoy, and they can do it in kind of safe spaces, and they can explore and experiment. I joke that when Ben and I were kids a long time ago, that you had to choose baseball or comic books. Like you didn't really have
Yeah.
to, but you felt like you did, because that was sort of the
Yeah.
way things were. And I didn't explore. I was always like a like fantasy novels, like Isaac, not whatever, it doesn't matter what's the ones, but like all the dragons and wizard books, right? That was kind of
Yeah.
my nerd outlet, but I really wanted to, be a sports guy. So now it's like so much easier to do what you want to do, and the data's all there, and I love it. I love telling my girls they can like anything they want and see all these different experiences. And not that we couldn't, but I just joke around. It's kind of like it wasn't as easy back
It was
then.
harder. I think it was harder
Yeah,
back in the day.
I think it gets easier as time goes on, because it becomes more, because just everything in general is becoming more accepting, which is amazing.
It
but
is.
No, I definitely think it was harder, like in the past. Even when I was growing up, it was the thing of like I would read a lot of books, and so anytime I was also very sociable though, so it was really weird to people when I would read a book, because they like I'd be at a party and like be in a corner and read a book, and people would be like, oh, could you like come hang out? Why are you reading a book? What are you doing? But so it is that weird dichotomy almost of like you're either one or the other, and so it's weird to people even when they find people who are like, wait, what do you mean you like books but you also like to like socialize? It's like, you can like both.
No, and I've been drinking from a nerd fire hose for like 10 years now. Like just all this stuff I didn't know existed. I'm learning, like magic and RPGs and all the stuff I had no awareness of, frankly, growing up. Now it's all, it's all awesome.
I love
and designing games has been a good excuse to get to go to the conventions.
True.
And like Matt said, for us, it's a great excuse to say, hey, we got to go to these 3 to 4 conventions a year. It's part of our job. So we got to do it.
Yeah, I love that too. I love when it's part of the job and you're just like, oh no, I have to go to a convention. Oh my.
Yeah, we better leave a day early. We'd hate to be late. We got some meetings on Wednesday nights. So we better take work off and go early. Yeah.
Yeah, that is my favorite thing. I mean, I miss it because at this point I miss it. I miss it for that. I miss it for like all of the fun that is wrapped up almost in work as well. Because there's a lot of play that you have even when you're working, which is amazing. So when it comes to board games as well, how long have you both been, did you both like meet and then instantly bond over board games, or did you get into it like later in life, or how long have you been in love with board games and interested in them for?
So I grew up playing all the standards, like chess and Stratego and kind of the on the shelf ones that, were in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
And then in college, me and Matt went to college together in the late 90s. One of our friends played Catan, but we didn't listen to him. We kind of blew him off. And I don't know if you remember back then, but there was a big poker craze. Like it was like, the Texas Hold'em was big. So we spent all of college playing like Risk and poker. And our buddy, like years later, was like,
that's great.
I tried to get you guys to play Catan, 10 years ago, and you wouldn't listen to me, type of thing. And we're going on, like, our families vacation together a lot. Matt's got the teenage girls and I have 5 kids, and there's like a big group of us. There's 10 adults, 15 kids type of thing. We were going on a trip one time and Matt stopped and bought Catan because he had piqued an interest. Someone had said something. So Matt stopped and bought it on the way to some vacation, and that kind of just set us off. And we've kind of we played Catan for like 2 years, literally, Matt, before somebody told us, hey, there's this website called Board Game Geek where you can actually find other games besides just Catan. And then, geez, within months, we own dozens.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, that'll happen. Catan it'll pull you in and grind you up into all of these different things, and you're like, what is happening?
And then,
I love that.
So this would have been like in, I don't know, 04, 06, 07, somewhere in there. But like, if you remember back when like Puerto Rico was, the #1 game. Okay. So I would just go to the site and buy like the top 10 games and like Power Grid in Puerto Rico. So that's kind of like the ones we grew up on in the industry, was those types. And I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years in, I said, hey, Matt, we're designing a game now. And he's just like, okay, show me what you got.
I love it. And when you got Catan that first time, did you bring it on vacation with you? Were you playing it? Yeah, I love that.
We played it like once or twice with a friend of a friend, like Ben said. even right before that, and we just really wanted to it just not only that you could find it, right? And you can't find a lot of games, especially 15 years ago.
Yeah, you couldn't just get it at Target. You had to buy it at the Blue Dragon in
the
our local town.
Yep, the game store. Yep.
That was literally the name of it.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that's and now everything's a Target. It's crazy. But yeah, it's so funny because I have a friend that I vacation with, and we will usually, when we've been on vacation together, we'll bring like a bunch of games. And we were vacationing this one time together and brought, we were playing Arabian Nights and some other stuff. And we would, at night, we would go for drinks, and then we would sit and we would just sit and play games. And we were at this resort, and people would always come by and be like, what are you guys doing? Like, what is this?
Yeah.
But it's so much fun it's so funny because I just feel like when you do that at a resort, or if you're somewhere very specifically vacation-y, people are like, what's happening here? One of my favorite ones too is Hive. I love playing Hive at bar tops because I have a travel copy of it.
Oh yeah.
It's so much fun. Yeah. And all the
bartenders. That happens a lot. Me and my brother like to go out and play like Sherlock Holmes consulting detective out at a restaurant or a cigar bar or something. It's my number one game of all time. And it never ceases to, somebody will come by and be like super interested. And what are you guys doing with this map on the table and these booklets and everything? And like, it is such a riot, but people are always interested when they see it out in public.
Yeah. And I feel like a cigar bar is a really good place for like Sherlock.
It's kind of my favorite thing ever, I'll be honest. Yeah. I just love going and puffing and acting like Sherlock. It's pretty awesome.
That's great. And when it comes to, I guess, making the games, what was the game I guess that started it? Like, what did you come with being like, this is the thing we're doing, let's go? What was that first play testing?
That was Fleet.
It
was our first crack at it. So like legitimately, Ben came up to me in the morning at work, and I'm sitting at my cube, and I'm typing away or whatever, and he goes, "Hey, I got this idea," and it's about whatever, multi-use cards and a couple other ideas that he had, and goes, we're gonna make a game. I'm like, okay. So then that day we went to Taco Bell, which was not the first or last time we went there, for lunch, and we worked on Fleet, and it was not Fleet then, but it was a multi-use card game. And the interesting part was that part of the impetus was, like Ben said, we've been playing games for a few years now, and we played with a whole group of our engineering. We're engineers where we work, and we had a weekly game night at a friend's house. And as engineers are kind of inclined to do, right, we were very analytical and critical, and we would break things down and talk about what happened when we played a game, and sometimes almost to the point of being boring. But that's kind of how we thought through games, and we had been playing like Race for the Galaxy and some other really awesome games like that. And one of the things about Race for the Galaxy that was always really cool is these multi-use cards, and Ben kind of had his own take on that. And then as well as this idea for this license auction, which is interesting because if you look back now, I mean, we didn't know what we didn't know, and we'd never designed a game before, but he probably came to me with 65-70% of that game, off the top of his head from driving into work in the morning. And he had, he's got this little notebook like a lot of designers do that he writes ideas down in, and he had a couple of core things, and off we went. I mean, Fleet took us almost 2 years to design, I think, probably. And that was, again, because we were just kind of learning the process, right? We were testing, we were iterating, and it was awesome. We would do it at lunch at work. We would get a conference room. We would sit and play. A couple of our buddies would play with us, and we would play hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of games. I mean, no exaggeration. And it was so much fun. And we didn't know what meant to finish a game because we had never done that before. So we just kept working and working, and it finally kind of honed into what it was. And the interesting part, I think, for me looking back, was how little we knew about the industry because we weren't in it, right? We had never been to a con. We never met anybody.
That blows my mind that you went and made the game first and got that published, and then you were like, no, I guess we'll go to a con.
Yeah, no, our first con was to support the release of Fleet. And that actually, it kickstarted through Eagle Griffin. We didn't know what Kickstarter was. Like, this is the dawn of Kickstarter, but still, I'd never even heard of it. And I was literally kind of treating it like business. I was cold calling and emailing, and I was searching websites for contact addresses and kind of writing up like a proposal basically of here's what the game is. And our prototype was literally poker cards with like labels printed out that said, like, it said shrimp in words with like there was no art. We didn't know what we were doing.
I taped paper to playing cards.
Yes,
that was our prototype.
He taped cut out paper to prototype. That's what we sent to publishers. And because we didn't know. So, but we learned a ton, and it was awesome. And that's really, I mean, to Fleet's credit, right? It's 12 years later or 10 years later, and people still play the game, and that's allowed us to continue doing this. That initial success of Fleet has allowed us to keep, I mean, we'd probably do it anyway, but it's allowed us to be successful and continue to kind of build off of that in a way that, has allowed us to do so many more games since then.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's very impressive that Fleet was your first game and it's such a success. Like, how many expansions and things have you done for Fleet since it came out?
A lot.
Yeah. A full expansion and, a couple spin-off games in the same, universe. So it's been very good to us. The funny thing is what Matt said about Kickstarter was, what was that? Like, it was either 2011 or 2012. Fleet made, I don't know, 25 grand, maybe, Matt, 30 grand on Kickstarter.
Something like that, yeah.
But that put it as a top 10 all-time gaming Kickstarter at the time, if you can believe that.
Yeah.
And I mean, what a world. I mean, now there's, multi-million-dollar projects coming out the ears, but back in 2012, if you made 25 grand, you were a top 10 all-timer on Kickstarter. So it's kind of wild how that's changed. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's still pretty cool though. I think anytime you have a project, regardless of like, what the numbers are, when you're on that list of like one of the top things, because it just means based on everything that's happening, this is one of the projects that people really believed in the most. So that's pretty cool. I like that.
It opened a lot of doors for us for sure.
Yeah. And I'm so glad because there's so many awesome things that you've designed together. So how many games have you designed together? You're welcome, actually, because I was looking at it, but have you designed pretty much everything together, right?
Yeah. So for starters, that is, I mean, like Matt said, we're best friends. Our families literally vacation together. Like we're lifelong friends. So we got into it saying we're going to design together. I don't have any desire to design without Matt, but he also knows I would finish nothing without him because he's on top of being a great designer and a good friend, he's a finisher. Like I never would have got Fleet done. First of all, I wouldn't have finished the design. I would have got 65% done and then started something else because that's what I do with everything in life. And then I certainly would not have found a publisher. So Matt's awesome at all that. But even that aside, like he said about going to conventions, kind of the journey is the fun, having somebody that we do it together, we travel together, we have these fun conventions together, like we enjoy success, we enjoy our failures, whatever. It's just in it with a buddy. To me, it is like the fun of it. So I think we're 15 published now, Matt, with maybe 16 and 17 coming out this year. So it's been a pretty good ride. Yeah,
I think I was trying to count as Ben was talking. I think it's 18 maybe now.
Okay.
With Subastral, I think, and it's it's awesome that it's that many. And there's been a lot of that's Fleet type stuff, but it's been exciting for 10 years now.
Yeah, that's a lot of games as well. To even do in 10 years. Like, I love as well when you talk about Fleet and you talk about that process, you're like, it took us 2 years and we were really like working on it. We didn't really know, but 2 years is also, for your first game, especially, like such a short amount of time, I think, based on designers that I know that I've talked to. Like, there's some people that spend like 5 years designing a game before they really feel like, okay, like I'm ready to jump into this industry and kind of see what happens. So that's pretty crazy. And I'm glad that you have it. Sounds like you have it down to like a really good science with each other where you really know where we need to go, which is great.
Yeah. It gets easier. Yeah. I mean, you get faster. Like you said, what to do now. And we're better at understanding, what games are worth our time, in the sense that there's always ideas, right? Ideas are not easy. I don't have ideas, frankly. Ben has most of the new ideas, but there's a understanding what is worth the effort, honestly, right? Because we have limited time. Like Ben said, he's got 5 kids. I've got teenagers. We meet once or twice a week, and that's the time we have. And we talk, obviously, the rest of the week, but we know we've only got, call it 3 or 4 hours a week to truly design together. Mm-hmm. So we want to make sure that whatever we're spending that time on is something that is, that we're enjoying, because that's important, because we're doing it, and then also something that we feel like can, be a product at the end of the process. So we've gotten so much better at really narrowing that down much quicker, and understanding that these things are something that we want to work on because it has a place.
Yeah, I would say our rate of games reaching the finish line has definitely increased over the years. Back in 2012 and 2013, we had Fleet, and that was great. And that gave us a lot of ins as far as pitch opportunities. So companies would schedule time with us, and they're very gracious. Hey, you're the Fleet guys. Yeah, we'll hear your pitch. But we were still making a lot of games that didn't make it to the finish line back then. We'd probably be 3, 4, 5 full done games in before we hit another published title back then. So we were, throwing away a lot of prototypes, and we still do, but we're a lot more efficient today because, to Matt, what he said, we'll ditch an idea a lot faster now if we can see if it's not going where it needs to be, it's not doing if it doesn't have a market. Like we're a lot quicker now to down select and be more efficient with our time. So we have less games kind of going on the shelf, never to be heard from again these days, and that certainly helped us, get to the numbers. So
yeah, that's really I feel like a skill. So that's pretty cool that you've been able to do that together. When it comes to Three Sisters as well, is the Kickstarter done for that? Can people still get in on that if they wanted to?
Yeah,
they can.
So they can. The Kickstarter is done. It went super well.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, with like 3,000 backers, I think, which is awesome. And then the late pledge is open today. It's not live in the sense you can order it, but it takes you to a drop page that lets you kind of sign up. And then probably next week sometime, we'll be taking late pledges as we kind of wrap up production. And I mean, talk about learning things on the fly. So running your own game company is we definitely don't want to be, say, somebody awesome like Renegade. We want to be boutique, right? This is Ben and I's designs. We'll do 1 or 2 a year, probably 1 a year, and that's it, right? We're not gonna, try to design. We're not gonna have 10 releases a year, anything along those lines. But just understanding all the things that go into. I mean, we've always known, because we've done enough games now with different companies. We understand the people behind the scenes and the people that put so much into every release that don't get their names in the box. And even beyond designers and artists, right? Designers and artists obviously are more upfront because they're seeing our design, they're seeing like Beth Sobel and her amazing, incredible work. But there's so many more people after that do really hard, important jobs. And the board game industry is getting better at recognizing those folks, I think, and I'm super happy about that, because it's not just, even Motor City Gameworks, right, isn't just Ben and I. Like there's 6 more people that have had a little piece of it, that have done work for us and helped us get it to the point now where we're able to, work on those production files and begin to get them and talk to the factory and all those exciting things that, I only knew of kind of adjacently, and you're learning very quickly as you go. So, and the fact that the Kickstarter was successful is awesome. I mean, I kind of always joke that no one knows nothing about nothing. So we were hopeful that there was going to be some success, but you just don't know till you're out there. And the fact that folks came out to support it was awesome.
Yeah, you never really know until you try it, and then it's like, ooh, I hope this is
right.
I hope this is good. But yeah, I'm glad it still has time too. I was actually looking at Three Sisters today, and I thought it looked like super awesome and really cool. So, and I love even the artwork that there was with it. It looks really great. Who does the artwork for that game?
Beth Sobel.
Yeah, Beth. She did the cover.
She did the cover. Yeah.
And Marlies Berens did the sheets, and she just did a phenomenal job too.
Yeah. I was looking at the box cover, and I was like, dang, I should have known it was Beth Sobel.
Yeah, she's the best.
That
was a bucket list item, was to work with Beth, once, and now we're getting to work with her multiple times, and in the same year. It's fantastic.
I love that. That's so great. Yeah, you all 3 of you together, and with, I'm sure, like you were saying, a bunch of other people behind you as well that are doing a bunch of work, make a really beautiful and really just like cool game. So thank you. I also have no worries. And I also have a question for you about those games as well. I was wondering, although lately I've been asking these questions, so it's okay if you don't have favorites for things, because I feel like there's a lot of people that I'm meeting that are like, please don't make me pick things, Amanda. And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. But do you have, of the games that you've done so far, is there a game that really stands out for you as like one that's got a really special place sort of like in your heart in terms of the experience, or just what it ended up being at the end in general? Who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Matt. I'll go second.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm one of those people that says I don't have favorites, but I do in this case. So my favorite is Morocco right there. And it's not because it was, what it is, honestly, is Ben and I's love letter to those kind of mid to late 90 Kinesia games that we grew up on, in the sense of, game wise. And
Yeah.
we just really, that's where, when we finally found there was, like Ben found Board Game Geek, right? So we moved on from Catan, and some of the first games we played were Samurai and Tigers and Euphrates and Through the Desert and all these and I love those games. And I'm not sure that there was a giant market for one of those games from Ben and I, but
there wasn't,
as it turns out. But still, the opportunity to get it out there, and that was Eagle Griffin, and they were awesome. And it was a nice production, and it's my favorite game to play still of all of our games. If I'm going to get to play one with people that, if I'm going to teach it or play with people that know what they're doing, I'll play Morocco anytime. It's just got those sort of, almost abstract, frankly, but those Euro sensibilities that I just still love in games.
Yeah, I love that.
So my sentimental favorite is a game called Pete Motts that came out from Lookout a couple of years ago. It's a game about, Pete Motts is like little birdie in German. So it's our card game about birds at a bird feeder. And it's sentimental to me because my wife bought a bird feeder like years ago, and we hung it in the tree. And when I have 5 kids, so I do a lot of dishes. I spend like half my life doing dishes at the sink. And Matt jokes that our games are just things Ben sees out his window. And that's kind of true. So got the feeder there, and I love watching it. And then I bought like 5 books about what are the birds. So I'm looking them up, in the books to figure out what they are. And I got really into it. And then one day I brought, the proto to Matt and said, hey, we're making a game about birds jostling at the feeder now. And he's like, shut up. Nobody likes birds. This was like before Wingspan was even a thing. Right. Yeah. So it's like, turns out I was right, and people like birds. Mm-hmm. But it's a sentimental favorite for me. And it kind of had a cool journey. We actually pitched Mayfair before they, were purchased, and it kind of made it through that whole transition of Lookout and Mayfair kind of, sunsetting and the whole thing. But it was so fun and so well received that it made it to the finish line even through all that. And then it got like a Gen Con release, and it was just really fun. And it's in like the same vein as Stellar and Subastral, and those, me and Matt call them like our mathy card games. We actually call them the disappointingly mathy card games, because that was in a review one time. I think it was Pete Motts, Matt.
It was for Pete Motts.
Somebody gave it like a really low rating, and they just said disappointingly mathy, and I'm like, yeah, that's our thing. That's what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, so
math is a part of I think in an integral part of board games. Any way you slice it, it's really hard to remove the math from the game. Which is it's so weird. I never thought I would like math, and I love board games. So every time I'm like, I hate math, I'm like, but I love board games, so I guess I don't hate math.
So like that like line of card games from us were like Pete Motts and Stellar and Subastral. Those, like I said before, being from the Midwest, that's just like where our heart is at, and my heart is at, is just sitting down. You can tell people how to play in 5 minutes, and you're playing a card game. And we're kind of inspired by Arboretum. Like, that is just my favorite card game of all time. I am so in love with Arboretum. Like, every time I see Dan Cassar, the designer of it, we'll see him at Unpub like once a year. I just give him a hug. We barely know each other. I just give him a hug. I'm like, thanks for making Arboretum. I just appreciate it so much.
It is so good. And it's so interesting that you say that, because like I love Arboretum as well. And I never really like until you said that, I wasn't thinking to myself like, oh, these games kind of have a very similar like feel. But now I'm just like, oh my gosh, it makes so much sense, because we're going to talk about it in a bit. But one of the things that I was thinking when I play games like Stellar, and I know when I play games like Subastral, I'm going to get this vibe as well, is that kind of like, it's ruthless, but it's very relaxing. And so that like, I'm like, oh, I'm going to win. But I'm also just like, but ooh, if I don't, everything's going to be so pretty and look so nice. So it's that weird, I love those meldings of those two things though, because they're usually not things we've put together. And I found over the past few years that when it comes to like a very niche thing that I enjoy games that are very like competitive, highly competitive, but very beautiful in terms of the design and what we're actually doing. So it's almost like I can be competitive, but I can also feel laid back at the same time. So it's like competitive without the energy of having to be like aggressive, I guess.
Well, you're absolutely right. They're like
Peacefully
super
aggressive. I don't know.
they're like super chill and beautiful.
Yeah.
But there's these like opportunities to like knife fight too. And they're like super, yeah, you have those chances to just like,
Yeah.
Arboretum, hey, I'm holding your 7 and I've been holding it for the last 40 minutes, and you're not scoring your oak trees.
Yeah, it's like games like Azul too. Like when I play Azul, I
Yeah.
get that similar feeling if I'm like, look how beautiful this is, but I will murder your
Exactly.
tiled wall that we're building. Like, what am I even? I think it's also the thing too of how can you even get mad about something that is, it kind of diffuses the conflict at the table in terms of like just making it about strategy, because it's like I can't even get mad at someone because it's like you took my tile that I wanted. You took my daughters that I was, just so then you just feel silly and you're like, I can't even be mad. I'm just like planning my strategy and like focused on that. I'm just focused. I'm not mad. I'm focused, which I love. So we're about halfway through. So I'm going to give everybody that code word. Speaking of cool games. So for Circadians, for those of you that were waiting for this, the code word today is Cosmos. So you can enter that word into the chat. And yeah, I don't know. I kind of picked Cosmos today because I was thinking of like Subastral and Stellar and kind of this idea of looking down at the earth and then also kind of like looking up at the sky. And that's just what came to me. So Cosmos is the word. I like how it's also become a thing now that I explain to everyone why I chose the word. I don't have to do that, but there it is. And yeah, so talking about sort of those games and where we've kind of gone so far. We've gone to outer space with Stellar. We've, explored the Earth's biomes with Subastral, which is where we're going next. And you've done a few sea sort of games. There's a few games around the sea, like Fleet, and there's quite a few of those I noticed when I was looking at your catalog. And then I also noticed that you have some adventure games. So we have some licensed games that you've done, like Goonies and Back to the Future, which are really fun. Is there a particular theme that you ever find yourself coming back to? Because you're kind of like, I love how the themes are all over, but I was kind of wondering if there's something overarching for you there.
So
designers.
Go ahead, Matt. I'll go.
No, I was going to say, we do joke around. We joke about Ben's window because I think, like we said, he does his dishes and looks outside and sees things. But really, I think nature is just one of those things where there's so many opportunities to do things that are mechanically interesting, yet make sense if they're tied properly to, what you're trying to accomplish in the game, and then allows you for just, again, ridiculous art. We've been super fortunate from, all the card games Ben talked about, from Piedmont's to Stellar to now Subastral, to have, artists that were specifically, the Piedmont's artist was, literally a bird illustrator. Like, he does science illustrations for birds, and the Stellar artist that's what he does. He does space stuff. That's what he's, and they found him specifically because he does that. And obviously Beth is good at everything, but her nature stuff is off the charts. Yeah. So when you see the Subastral art, it's something else. It's, I was joking around on Twitter a few weeks back that, Ben and I just took, these 8 ridiculous paintings that she did that are, like art level, museum paintings. We just put some numbers in the corner and made a game up so that you could, look at her art while you move cards around. But so nature's always something that we go back to. I think we have been we've been lucky or fortunate to, to be have a big breadth of different themes. Everything from, like you said, nature to IPs to Wasteland Express Delivery Service is probably our biggest game. That was with Panosaurus, and that was, like very much futuristic, kind of punk, and like the sort of Mad Max kind of feel. And a lot of that is frankly because of these awesome publishers. Even Renegade really helped us to hone in what made sense for Subastral, and part of that was specifically to follow on from Stellar and sort of kind of reach back to that same audience, as well as kind of build a little bit of a line in the sense of, how we progress from space to Earth, and maybe there's more in the future we can do with that. So that's, Ben and I have been both theme first. There's always this kind of ongoing sort of chicken and the egg argument with designers, right? Is it theme first? Is it mechanics first? I tend to be very mechanical, honestly, in the way that I think, regardless of, playing and designing, but we've done both, right? Ben literally said, this is a bird feeder and we're going to make, a game about it. And we've also done games where it was just an idea and we built the whole game around an idea and then had to say, okay, how are we going to make this a theme now that makes sense mechanically with what we've done? So I think both are completely, things that we've done, and both are completely, they make sense based on the designer and based on the design that they're working on. So we certainly, I always like doing that IP work if it's an IP that I love, because it's so fun to sort of try to see through these things that you remember from childhood and say, how do I make this make sense in a game? And that's just a fun challenge as designers. But in general, anything that, we can make sure gets beautiful art at the end is a good place to start.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you also did such a great job with sort of melding. You both do a great job with this idea of kind of melding the theme and the mechanics together in a way that really makes sense with what you're doing. Like, I actually have played the Goonies game and I loved it. I thought it was so much fun. Yeah, and I thought it was such a good way to capture sort of what that experience of the movie is like and kind of put you in that, and it's very exciting and a little bit frantic was kind of how I felt when I was playing it. So that you really do a good job of marrying those two things together in a way that it does a good service to that theme. So it's you're really getting the mood of the theme, if the theme had a mood, which I feel like all of your themes do have moods. There's emotions that I get when I play the games.
Oh, thank you. I actually think that's an incredible way to describe it, because there are some games, right, where you're truly trying to historically accurately represent the thing. And that's more of kind of a war game. A lot of
more of a simulation.
Or a simulation. Thank you. And I think putting it like a mood is such a great way to describe that, because that's really what it is. You're not going to be able to simulate 6 kids going down below a restaurant and seeing a pirate ship, right? And all those great Goonies moments. But what you can do is, like you said, give those, that mood and emotion that goes with that experience. And that's what you try to match. And, I think we've been successful sometimes. We miss like everybody else too, but we do our best. And that's something that we try to think about the entire design process.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that. And I love that so much of it is apparently being inspired by your window, Ben. I think that's so great.
Yeah. So like Matt said, a lot of it is nature. I live, north of Detroit out in the country. So that's literally where Three Sisters came from. Was we have the backyard garden and the beehives and all that. And we're just hey, let's make a roll and write about that. And like Matt said, it's more fun in the game because your stuff grows and doesn't die, and you actually get produce, and the animals don't eat it and stuff. So you can, like you said, the feel of it versus being a simulation. And then I think the other thing for me, where I get ideas is being on travel, going on vacation. If you go somewhere really cool, it really sparks, and it just feels good to work on a game based on somewhere you've been, because, it kind of makes you feel really cool. You remember the good time you had, and you have this positive, vibe the whole time you're working on it. So I really like making games about, places we've been and whatnot. So that's the other big one for me. Although sometimes it's funny, like Matt said, you'll spend the life cycle of a game with one theme, and then just the publisher, can change it at the end too. And sometimes it works and sometimes it's whatever. We had one, Matt, remember I was calling it Texas Dice for years and years, because I was in Texas and I was driving around, and there's these oil derricks everywhere when you're driving from Houston to San Antonio. And I kind of found it beautiful, the landscape, and researched Texas and the ports and all these things. And it was that for years. And then it ended up being Floating Market with Eagle Griffin Games, a totally different theme when we put it out, which was cool and it was beautiful. But at the same time, I lost a little bit of that kind of, I don't know, I kind of missed, what it was, but.
Yeah, well, I think it connects you to that game because it's a personal experience, and it probably actually helps you to deliver what we were talking about earlier, that mood, because it's what's happening is you are both building a mood together of well, what is this how does this make us feel? What do we want people to get out of this?
Yes.
And so then when you wrap it all up with a nice bow and it all works, you're now that's a mood. We just packaged an experience for you that's going to make you feel those things, because that's what we felt.
Yeah.
Which, so I feel that. I'm sorry that there's no Texas Dice. I feel you have to make a Texas Dice game, though. I think that's what that means.
Now, I super appreciate your kind words about Goonies, though, because I was so proud of that one, and it kind of like went under the radar, and it didn't make distribution. And like we were talking earlier, there's just a roller coaster with every design. You know, some hit and some don't. But I was always really proud of that one, and it got reviewed just fine, and players liked it, but it didn't hit, and that happens, and it's just part of the game. So I'm really happy to hear that you liked it.
Yeah, I did like it. And I feel like it's also really hard with IP games though as well too, because there's like there's like a lot of expectation, and then there's also like it's getting better now, I think, as we move forward. But I remember a period of playing games where every IP game I went to, I was like wincing to sit down and play it because I was always like, oh, this is probably gonna be terrible. And like fortunately, I would say, you know, in the last decade or so, we've seen a major shift in IP games from being like just a thing that we can sell to like people actually having the passion to give you a game that is really true to what that IP is. So now we're like in the IP like great days, but I feel like it also might have suffered from that. We were going through that shift, I think, at the time when Goonies came out, because I remember playing it and being like, this is so much fun. And I remember even sitting down with it and being like, having that wincing feeling of like, oh, I'm nervous about what this will be. And then I really enjoyed it. So yeah, it's a weird thing. Also, like you were saying, there's lots of moving parts in board games that people don't understand sometimes. So sometimes everything in a game can be great, and then this one thing didn't really go the way we wanted. And so because of that, an entire like launch of a game is just like, unfortunately, not as great.
And what you said about expectations is the biggest challenge with IP games. And me and Matt, we learned a lot on the IPs we worked on, and I think we do a better job with those expectations now, you know, 5, 6, 7 years later. But it's tough because, like you said, you want to put a game out that's a real game. It's got real choices. It's it's an industry game. It's not just some fake game with the IP slapped on. But at the same time, what are the expectations of the consumer that's going to buy this game and open the box? Yep. And I don't think we had our head around that when we did Back to the Future and Goonies. And I think today we could do a much better job with that, because that was a learning curve for us, that aspect of it.
Yeah, well, and it is hard to balance all of those elements, because it really does depend on who's playing. And like some it's like you want to sort of do this thing where you're like, well, we want gamers to love it, but we also want people that maybe have never played a game to love it. So then we need to make it crunchy but accessible, but we also have to make sure it's true to the IP. So that's a lot of things.
It is.
I do not envy anyone that designs these games, but I appreciate everybody that goes and designs IP games, especially the ones that I've loved. And fortunately, in the last in the last little while and beyond that, it's been a rarer experience for me to pick up a game and actually be like, oh no, this was so bad. So that's the plus side of it. We're definitely all, I think, moving forward together. When it comes back to the design of the games as well, is there any pieces or, mechanics that you come back to or love playing with? I know we've talked about cards a lot, and I kind of put that question in there to talk about cards because, you like cards, and I've noticed that. There's a lot of cards.
No, we do. And Ben has said it a few times, but it's because I still love playing hearts and euchre and poker and spades and Michigan Rummy and all these games that I've played my whole life.
Contract Rummy.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And even, one of the games we didn't mention is kind of over Ben's shoulder called Ladder 29. And that was entirely based on us taking a 52 card game that we learned in college from a friend of ours and kind of gamifying it. Right. And that was, because we just love playing cards, and that's something that I still love to this day. So we certainly come back to card games a lot. I do think, right now we're leaning pretty heavily on roll and writes. That's by choice. And we, part of that was Fleet Dice, right? We didn't know what we didn't know when Fleet Dice was launched. It's been nothing but successful for us in the 2 or 3 years since it's been out. So, with Three Sisters and kind of our future plans with Motor City Gameworks, we want to continue exploring that sort of heavy, strategic, we call them loaded roll and writes. And we want to continue exploring that space. And because of something, frankly, we, by accident, not by design, we were a little bit ahead of the game with the idea that you could take a roll and write and do something that had generally been a, sort of a lighter experience often with a roll and write, or a more sort of casual experience, and take it to the next level and be more strategic. And it's something that we kind of, with Fleet Dice, we're sort of out front of that, and people responded incredibly to that. So the idea that you can do that has really opened our eyes, and it's a space that we love working in. So we've got Three Sisters now, and we've got future plans, and I know Renegade has Hadrian's Wall, and there's this there's definitely some a blooming of these games, because I think it's such a cool space to do stuff in, and we are going to keep doing that until people don't want it anymore.
And speaking of Hadrian's Wall, have you thought about doing like a flip and write, like kind of a combo of with the cards and the writing?
Yeah,
I feel like that would be so perfect for you.
It is. I mean, we've done dice so far. Right now that's kind of, and one of the things we've been focusing on is we jokingly call it Ispahan, which is an old board game that's got this dice mechanic. So what we like doing right now is we're exploring this idea that you can take dice and basically separate them or organize them in different ways. That allows different types of actions and different types of bonuses and combos. And we're playing a lot with that, and that's been really fun for us. But for sure, I mean, to your point, I think that's probably next is combining our love of cards with our love of rolling rights.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a flip and write will definitely be in our future at some point.
Yeah, I never realized how much I loved those until like a few years ago for flip and writes and roll and writes. And then I realized that it all started with Yahtzee when I was little. My mom loves Yahtzee. Yep. And so I grew up playing a lot of Yahtzee. And then I was like, when someone pointed that out to me, like, because, Yahtzee is like one of the first to do it in America.
Absolutely.
And I was like, oh, yeah, it is a roll and write. What?
It is.
It's still fun.
It is still
fun.
Yep.
Yeah.
And, 10 or 12, maybe even more years ago, Leacock released Roll Through the Ages, and it kind of, it wasn't all roll and write because it had that pegboard thing, but like that was a great game over 10 years ago that we all loved, but it didn't like start a revolution or whatever. It was just kind of this really good game that people played, and then they went on to other things, but it easily could have created the big
wave,
stir. Yeah, the wave 10 years ago. So to Matt's point, we're always going to make a card game. There's never going to be a time, if we're making games, we have card games in the mix. And we joke with our friends who are designers, there's that fun moment at the convention, especially like an unpub where you're playing each other's designs. It's like 12 or 1 in the morning and everyone's kind of done. You're just shooting the breeze. And if you're the person with the card game in your pocket, it's like, hey, now we're playing my game. So I'm always telling my friends, always have a card game on you. Like that's the easiest way to get people to play your game is just slap a card game out there. And it is funny how well it works because nobody wants to at that point play a big game, but if you have a card game, they're willing to play it with you.
100%. And I've used that technique when playing with friends when they're tired. And I'm like, okay, well, we can stop, but I have this game, but you don't have to. It's just cards. And as soon as you just say, oh, it's just cards, people are always like, all right, what are we doing? What's happening?
Yeah. All right, let's do it.
And you can always hook them with cards too and get them to play multiple games usually of the same card game.
The thing that's kind of like our white whale that we'll probably get back to and try again is like Matt mentioned, when we got into industry, we were loving these, Kinesias from the 90s and the Stefan Felds and like these medium heavy Euros. And we've published a couple, Beta Colony, Morocco, Floating Market, and they've done okay. But we've never had like a pretty good hit with that level of game. And that's just like our favorite games to play. But we might not be the best at making them. As like, we're good at card games. I'm not being, whatever, but we're good at card games. And it turns out we're good at roll and write. So we're like really good in this smaller scale, but like we so want to make a really good Euro more than anything in the world. We want that like medium heavy Euro with our name on it that we made that everybody loves. And someday I think we'll crack it, but we haven't got there yet.
I think just keep going with it. I believe it is coming to you. I think a lot of the times with those games, like what you're working on right now is an integral part of building that Euro, because I think personally from a lot of the Euros, I mean, I've never designed a game, but a lot of the Euros that I've played and a lot of the designers that I follow that build Euros that I love have a tendency to really be focusing on certain mechanics that they love. And then once they're like the masters of those mechanics for what they wanted out of them, then they can start to like put the pieces in together. Because, and this is the interesting thing, I talk to people a lot about what types of games, do you like to play? And this idea of a Euro or a longer game that is strategic and has all these pieces versus a, light strategy game that is strategic but has maybe like a couple pieces or one piece and it's like one thing. And it's so funny because I love playing Euro games, but I also need to be in a mood, but I will always play light strategy. And I've had people before say like, oh, well, like, real gamers play the heavy stuff. And I'm like, this is that. It's just, I'm going to play 4 light strategy games and you're going to play 1 Euro. That's the only difference. I'm breaking it up into segments so I can take a break. And you're just like, let's sit down for 3 hours and go, which it's still very fun. I mean, I have also sat down and played Sidereal Confluence, which is not a Euro, but is a long game. And that game was like, I could not stop playing it. It's just so much fun. So long games are also enjoyable. But yes, cool. I'm going to ask one more question before we get to the questions in chat. So if anyone has those, put them in now. We're coming to you. But so with the games like Subastral and Stellar, there's a certain, like I was saying, there's a certain level of serenity. There's a certain kind of chillness to them. And they definitely have a very similar feel. So do you have an idea for like maybe where you want to go next with that? Or like if you were to do something, is there anything, I mean, I don't know what you're even allowed to tell us, but is there anything in the works or?
I think we're trying. I think we'd like to maybe sort of finish that. If you kind of look at it like we went from the sky to the earth, maybe the ocean's next. So we'd like to, like to explore that a little bit. I know we've done ocean stuff before, with the fleet, but I mean, kind of focusing on like that sort of exactly, and kind of like the science side of it, right? More
the
so
ecosystem side of it, and
yes, exactly. So that's what we're trying. We'd like to, I think we're working on that. We'll see what happens.
I'm way too excited about that. I love the ocean, so let's go.
Yeah.
I'm so ready.
We've got a pretty good start, but it's just been a little slower this year, because of not being able to get together as much and doing stuff remote is just tougher. But yeah, we've got a pretty good hot start on an underwater type of ecosystem game, and we're just plugging away at it, and hopefully Stellar has just been a great gift to us, has been great, and love what Renegade did with us, and hopefully Subastral does well also, and we can keep going with it because just love working with them.
Yeah, and I personally feel like, I don't know, I love Stellar, so I'm very excited for Subastral. And I think that would be a great little button for that sort of thematic trilogy to kind of go into the water. I was literally thinking, I was like, I don't know, where could they go next? What would be next? But that makes so much sense because people always say too, the oceans are basically like more unknown to us than outer space because it's just so vast. So what a beautiful world to explore. And it is a beautiful world under there. A little messy right now, but it's beautiful. Yeah, we got to clean it up a bit. But
I always joke with Matt that blue sells, water and air, like just the, anything that's blue for me just seems to pop. So that's always my joke to Matt. We got to make something blue. Make it blue. Blue sells well. So certainly the ocean would lend itself to that.
Blue does sell well. And blue also, even in these games, like that color really does lend to kind of that calm, but like mystical almost feel of the games and the worlds we're exploring within them. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna send it over to Desiree now. So Desiree.
All right.
Tell me about the questions in the chat.
Yes, so we do have a few here. So the first one, and I think you sort of answered this one, but if you had unlimited time and resources, what would be the type of game you'd like to design?
Sure did. That's that heavy Euro. Ben totally nailed it. It would be absolutely, if we knew that we could devote ourselves and spend hours a day getting it all to just work perfectly, right? Because that's really kind of what happens to us, frankly, is because of the way we design, say week over week, it's hard to iterate a 2-hour game. We play stuff together. That's how we design. So if we needed to change something, we had to play 2 full hours, make a change, and then we're like, all right, bedtime. We're old. Time to get to bed. And if we had all that time,
week.
See you in a week. So if we had unlimited time, I think we could focus on getting, that 2 hour. And for me, I think Amanda, something like you said, I tend to be, I don't do 4 hours if I can help it. I like 90 minutes is kind of my sweet spot, but you can give me a 60 to 90 minute kind of heavy strategic experience, that's where, like again, like these spells like Bonfire and Trajan, those kind of cool games, those are really what I love. And to Ben's point, we would love the opportunity to make one of those, but we'll get there. We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, that's it.
Awesome. Do you have any good lessons learned to share for designing games?
Yeah, so I have a couple things I like to say. If you're a new designer, I think design something that you're excited about and that you enjoy playing versus trying to like catch on to the next fad or what's popular. Anytime we've tried to chase a fad or design something just so we could sell it, that hasn't been our best design, and we lose excitement for the project and we lose passion. The best games we've designed are the ones that we are excited about playing ourselves, and we never get bored of playing them because it's the type of game we love. So that would be my first advice, is to design a game you're excited about yourself playing, and then hopefully others are feeling that. And then I also like to say is don't worry about what's out there. People like to say, oh, the world doesn't need another deck builder, or the world doesn't need another card game or roll and write. Well, it does need it if it's your design and you're excited about it and you're bringing fresh ideas to it. The world does need it because you as the designer are going to bring your twist on it and your perspective to that, and you're going to do it different than what's out there. So if you're excited about it, I say go for it. Don't worry that there's all these other ones out there. They're just mechanisms. It's okay that there's other games with those mechanisms. If you're excited about it, I say, do it. And then get a partner like Matt who does all the hard work after you actually have an idea. That's the other thing I like to say.
Yeah. That's the bonus.
Having a partner does help because it keeps you accountable, honestly, and it keeps you working on things. And if one person does lose a little, because it's the new idea, I think I see this with a lot of our friend designers. The new idea is always more exciting than the thing you've been working on for a couple of months, because there is an aspect of this that even though it's your hobby and even though we love doing it, it's a job in some extent. It takes a professional approach sometimes, and you've got to stay focused on something that you don't want to do, which is a skill that I've gotten better at as I've gotten older. And it's one of those things where you've got to keep chugging away sometimes, because that's how you finish something. And it's easier to chase that fun, exciting new idea than it is to stay on focus and keep each other moving. So the design with a partner keeps you accountable. My other small, really quick piece of advice always is to fail faster. And that just means get it played. Whatever your idea is, the quicker you can try that idea, the better off you are. And people tend to get stuck on making it perfect before they try it, or and I get that there's a nervousness of showing it to somebody else. If you're designing solo, you have to bring someone else to the table with you to try it, and that can be nerve-wracking, and I totally appreciate that. But the quicker you can get your ideas onto the table and just play them, even if it's not an entire game yet, just play your idea and see if it works. And if it still excites you after you've done that and you didn't get totally distraught and distracted and realize that you didn't like it, then hey, you got something to go for it. Just keep pushing at that point.
Awesome. Let's see. Are you guys still the Fleeples, or do you want to be referred to with a new moniker?
That's absolutely fine. That was from our buddy Dan Patrice named us that almost 10 years ago, Geek All Stars podcast. And absolutely, we'll be the Fleeples as long as we're designing games. That's totally cool. But go to Motor City GameWorks and buy our games too.
Awesome. Let's see. If you could ever go back to a game you made in the past, not published at the time, but now finding a way to complete it and make it what you want it to be, would you? I don't know if you can talk about any of that.
I think so. I'm going to pick one, and this game is published, and I think if we had a chance to go back, and we talked about this earlier, with Amanda about IP games. Our first chance at an IP, frankly, was Back to the Future. And what we made was a pretty good card game that probably didn't properly invoke the Back to the Future mood, I think is a great way to put that. So while the card game is fun, and it's something that I don't think either of us are disappointed in from a design perspective, from a product and experience perspective, we didn't know that we may have missed the mark a little bit, and that we probably weren't meeting those expectations that come with picking up a box with Marty on the front. and the DeLorean and the all the things that you kind of are invoking immediately upon picking that box off a shelf and spending your money on it. And then what you played was a pretty good card game, but it wasn't what you think. Well, I know I can tell you this from our feedback. It wasn't what folks were expecting. So if we had another chance to do that, we would A, do a better job, and B, we would be, we learned so much from that really helped us with Goonies and other things that we've done to, again, allow us to make sure that we are really, paying attention to what folks are going to think, again, from that reaction and that expectation perspective when we design, especially in the IP space.
Yeah, I hate to agree with Matt and be boring, but that was one that it was the biggest learning experience we've had. And, I'm not sure I want another shot on that IP, but it just was huge learning experience. And if we had funny enough, if we had the time machine to go back, we would have been like, whoa. Because at the time we're like, hey, they hired us to make it. They must want a pretty thinky strategic card game. Like, we're the Fleet guys. So they must want a really tricky, like, card game. And we always joke about Fleet. If you've played it, the catch-up mechanism in Fleet is to play better, which is kind of a joke. Like, if you fall behind in Fleet, you're just going to lose, and we got away with that. So we thought, hey, they must want like what we do, which is these pretty tight systems. Like, they wouldn't have hired us if they didn't want this type of card game. Well, no, they just wanted some professional designers to give them a game that is a good game. So we overthought it, and we made it's too hard. It probably would have been a fine card game, not named Back to the Future with some other theme and, off to the side. So Matt has this really cool thing that he says, and it's about the product versus the game design. You can have a really good game design that's a bad product. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you can have an okay game that's a fantastic product. So as we've gotten, in the industry more years, we've had our that lens on a lot more about the product side of it. What was the customer expectation? What's actually in the box for the price? The size of the box sets the stage for the product. All of those things are setting the customer expectation when they pay their money and they bring the box home. Even Goonies heard a little bit from that, because they took this really tight, cool card game and they put it in this big Euro box. So now you kind of get this big box and you're thinking, am I, bringing a Euro home? No, it's a card game. All of those things go into the product side of it. And we've learned so much over the years that I think we would have made some other decisions or tried to help the publishers make some different decisions back in the time. And that's something that we're really trying to do moving forward with our company, Motor City Gameworks, is focus on the product, because we can make a great game that's a bad product, and we don't want to do that. It's got to be something that when people spend their money and the expectations they have from the box, they open the box and it's what they wanted. So we're getting better at it.
Awesome. I think that is the last question we have. Yep, that's all I see.
All right. Those were all very good questions. Our chat always has great questions. They have such
Thanks,
good
chat.
insight. Yeah, thanks, chat. You rock. Good job. Good job today. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here and being on the show with me. It was so awesome talking to you both. Yeah, before we go, remind us of who you are, what you do, and where we can find both you and your work online.
Yeah.
So I am. Go ahead, Matt.
Okay, I'll go. So, yeah, again, Matt Riddle on Twitter is MD Riddlen, so MDRIDDLEN. That's the easiest way to get in touch with me. I'll always answer your questions on there. I do, troll Board Game Geek for our own games. I'm subscribed to everything. So if you ask a forum question, I may not answer it. Sometimes I like to let, the other folks answer questions about our games, and I'll jump in if I see something that needs fixing. But, I'm always on there. And then I think, again, MotorCityGameworks.com if you want to keep track of kind of where we're going with that project.
Yep. So I'm Ben Pinchback, and Pinchback21 on Twitter is where I'm the most active. Like Matt said, MotorCityGameworks.com. If there's a reach us out there if you got a question or something. Links to Three Sisters, which has a late pledge coming up. And then certainly check out Subastral coming from Renegade, which is coming out very soon. I think pre-orders are up. It's our next, thinky, mathy, disappointingly mathy card game with beautiful art. If you've liked Stellar or Piedmont's or Ladder 29 or any of our card games, it's definitely right in that lane. The one year when we were playing it at Unpub, it just killed. Like, not to be cocky or whatever, just being honest. Like, we've been to maybe 6 or 7 Unpubs, and sometimes, and if you're not familiar, that's the Unpublished Games Network. You go and there's 100 designers and 1,000, literally 1,000 people from the community show up and play these prototypes. Every now and then we've had kind of a game that was the buzz of the thing. And quite honestly, Subastral was it that year. The year it was at Unpub, everybody was playing it. We had people coming back and back and back to our table to play Subastral. So super excited about it, and looking forward to people playing it.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. You're getting me so hyped for it. I'm hyped.
Excellent.
It's working. Success. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. Before we go, I'm going to give people a couple more updates, just a couple more reminders. So yeah, we do have Scott Pilgrim Miniatures The World, which is now available. So you can check out that one online or with your friendly local game store. So keep an eye on that. It is a miniature team-based competitive game that we did in partnership with Oni Games, and it comes with painted minis, and it is super cool. You get to smash things, you get to throw instruments around and break them on people. It's very fun. All in good fun. And then of course we have Subastral, which is now available. So you can go online and pre-order that. And as we were saying, it is a beautiful strategic card game. So if you love things that require math at the end, because it does, I'm sure it'll require some math for you. But if you love games that are also competitive, but also just very like chill, this is what that will be, I'm sure. All right, friends, as well, we also have our Twitch schedule. So we have More Phenomenal Mondays, where you can tune in with us, where we play Heroes of the Grid scenarios, all the cool Power Rangers stuff. And then we have our Vampire Wednesdays. So if you want to get into any of the awesome stuff that we're doing and join the family, come join that. And of course, on Friday, I will be back here with you doing Renegade Society radio show, where we talk to lots of cool guests like Ben and Matt here. That is pretty much everything from me today. The code word for the giveaway, one more time, is Cosmos. So if you would like that copy of Cicadians, make sure you plug that in to the link that Desiree gives you in chat. All right, and that's all we have tonight, folks. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Matt, for being here with me.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Amanda and Desiree. It was absolutely a lot of fun being here, and we super appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you for being here, and we'll have to have you back whenever perhaps the 3rd installment comes in this trilogy.
Absolutely.
Yes. All right. And thank you so much, Desiree, for producing. Thank you, everyone, for watching. I've been your host, Amanda. Thank you so much. And remember, until I see you next week, play your game.